right. Alana, should I start us off?
Yeah, I'll let you go right ahead.
Okay. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us this evening. We can't see your faces, but we're glad you're here. So, our focus today is going to be on trust, specifically how we rebuild it after betrayal. And we're going to be exploring that through the lens of investment and financial metaphors. So, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box at any time, and we're going to leave that space at the end to answer any questions. But we'll notice it if it applies to what we're talking about right now. But we recognize some people come here and they want to talk about something else besides the subject that we have planned. So, but before we dive in, I want to introduce uh, Brandon, but I'm actually going to invite Alana to do that. So, because he's our guest today. Alana, you want to introduce Brandon?
I would love to introduce Brandon. Um, Dr. Brandon Wilde is new to Choose Recovery Services, but not new to doing healing work. And I think every time I've introduced you, Brandon, I've told everyone that back when I was just first out of grad school, Brandon was one of my supervisors, and I highly respect him. And it just worked out that our paths crossed again. And Brandon was at a place where he was transitioning more into private practice, and it made sense for us to align in the work we do. So, Brandon is here in Utah, and I will say Brandon is licensed 4 states: Idaho, Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. And so he can see people in quite a few states. But those of you who are lucky enough to be in person and have Brandon here, it has been really fun, Brandon, having you just right here and being able to see you. And thank you for coming tonight. Brandon, you'll see, has a really sharp brain. And so Luke made us this beautiful outline that we're going to go through tonight. And the thing that I love is I think, Brandon, under each of yours, it says like clinical insights, or I forget how he phrased it,
Very
but
formal, very formal.
Brandon's going to come in after us and give the clinical side. I loved it. Do you want to add anything to that, Brandon? Just introducing yourself?
No, just thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It's great to join you. I am so excited for the opportunity to just contribute where I can and provide support to the work that each of you are doing. It is a bit odd that I can't see faces, but I know there are people out there, and I just am really honored by the opportunity to be here, that Alana and Luke have invited me, and also just to be here and share some of those clinical insights as they pop up. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here.
Yeah.
And I will say, I got injured, so Brandon and I weren't able to record our podcast together. But Brandon will be coming on the podcast soon, and Brandon specializes in working with men's mental health, and he does a lot of couples work, but really working with men. And I think it's such an area that needs good, strong leaders in, and so I just want to add that that's one of your specialties.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple and family. My background is in couple and family, obviously, but I think just by nature of the work that I do in working with healing after betrayal trauma, I just have been fortunate enough to connect with men and to be able to work with them in addressing their mental health needs. So this is very nice to sort of see this all come together in this capacity, and I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you.
All right, friendly reminder, and then we're going to dive in. So please use the Q&A for questions. It should be somewhere in the bottom of your screen. You should see something that says Q&A with a question mark next to it. That's going to help the three of us be able to organize, especially the order in which stuff comes in. Not so much the chat function, but the Q&A function. That way we make sure we get it. And we can also respond to you. We can respond with text compared to answer via video. So just use that function if you can, please. That would be wonderful. And then the recording will go out later if you tend to miss something. So the stuff that comes in that applies to the topic, we're going to hit it as we go most likely. But the stuff that doesn't apply to the topic, which feel free to throw that in the Q&A whenever you want, and we'll touch on that at the end. All right. Okay, so let's jump into it. So the topic today is that um, it's going to be specifically how we rebuild after betrayal, and we're exploring it through the investment and the financial lens. Kind of interesting that we're going through that lens. You're like thinking we're here with the financial class. We're not. You're going to get it pretty soon. Um, okay, so here's the question I have for you. So, are you asking? Hold on. I told Alana I wouldn't genderize before we got into this today. So, I'm going to speak to the individual seeking recovery, which is the person that did betraying. I'm going to speak to the partner in healing, which is the person that was betrayed. So, for the individual seeking recovery, are you asking them to invest? So, when we begin recovery, we're often saying things like, I can think about the people that I work with, and they tell their partners, "I've changed. I'm never going to do this again." But whether we realize it or not, we're actually asking our partners to invest in us again, emotionally, physically, relationally. And it's like going to someone we've already defrauded financially and asking them to fund our next project without a plan, without any proof, without any accountability. So that's a really big ask. So if we just look at it through that financial lens, would we hurt somebody financially and then just say, "Hey, go ahead and can you invest in me again? Because I've changed. I'm never going to do this again." So, Alana, question for you. What does the emotional investment feel like for a partner side, especially when they've been asked for it too soon?
Um, Say that question one more time.
So if you got a partner who's been hurt and they're asking, somebody saying, "I've changed, I'm never going to do this again," reinvest in the relationship. What's it like for them to be asked to reinvest, especially like when it's being asked really quickly?
Yeah. Um, Really quickly is an interesting piece of that because what can sound like to us as professionals is really quickly can look very different in what's really quickly for a betrayed partner and really quickly for the person who has done the betraying. And so typically I see kind of everyone running almost on their own timelines. And so a lot of times the person who has been betrayed and they have been injured through this betrayal, their timeline for healing, well, A, it's always longer than what they want to. But a lot of times they're not ready to invest in trust immediately. Actually, sometimes they have a honeymoon period where they feel like they are. And then once we get through that honeymoon period and then the real like full extent of the injuries hit, that's when I see the betrayed partner go, "Oh my gosh, this is way bigger and has hurt way more than I thought. I need to figure out if I'm even safe." And where safety is impacted in the relationship, but often um, imbalances the way they feel safe in all areas of their life. Trauma has a way of making every area all of a sudden feel unsafe. Because if I was going to trust this person, the person I'm supposed to trust most, and then I find out they're not being trustworthy, they've hidden, they've lied, they've hurt me in these ways, the brain naturally then goes, well, what can I trust? If I could trust this, or I thought I could and I can't, can I trust God? Can I trust my friends? Can I trust my family? Can I trust everything? I remember saying to Luke back in the day of like, I think only my animals right now is what I feel like I can trust. That was
Yeah,
about the extent I was in the beginning. So they often can see and feel it's going to take a long time for that trust to rebuild. But often for the individual seeking recovery, if they're really diving in and doing the work and maybe having successes in ways they never have in their life before, they can go, I, I've changed. Like, why can't you see I've changed? Can you just trust me? Can we please just move forward? Look at all the things I'm doing. And so for them, a month or two can feel like a really long time with for a betrayed partner that can feel like it happened yesterday or minutes ago.
Mhm. Yeah. That I it's interesting because the 90 days, the 60 days can feel like a really, really long time. And that pain makes somebody go, "Yeah, you can trust me again." but there's a big investment that's being asked for there. Hey, Brandon, how do you help men slow down and recognize that they're at what they're actually asking for when it comes to asking for that trust again?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I wanted to chime in here, and hopefully this will answer the question, or I'm going to answer it the way that I understand. I think when we're talking about trust, there is this sense of urgency, and that's also oftentimes paired with a sense of reticence. And I think we have to recognize that urgency and hesitation can be experienced within the context of loss. And we're talking about grieving the loss of trust. We're talking about grieving the loss of security. And when we talk about security, we're talking about a basic need. And so reestablishing and understanding that trust is built or is rebuilt in really small, consistent moments, right? And oftentimes we want it to be tied to our concerted efforts, such as, hey, I'm not taking my phone with me into this space that we agreed to not take it. I'm coming home on time and I'm checking in without being prompted. So those start to add up as sort of like an inventory, and that can almost perpetuate an expectation that if I'm doing these things on this checklist, that I'm quantifiably trustworthy rather than qualitatively trustworthy through this consistent manifestation of um, uh, not just tasks, but really just moments, like consistent moments that we're just working towards rebuilding. So, um, I oftentimes work with men in recognizing that we're so performance driven that we tend to have checklists that we're like, once I've got all these checklists done, then I should achieve this goal of I've crossed over this threshold of being trustworthy, and it doesn't work that cleanly. We like things to work out cleanly, but this is very process oriented, and so there's a rebuilding that occurs across consistent moments that we can't predict.
Hmm. And let's, if we took a talk about it from how much time goes by, like talk about the checklist, but also time. Time can be a really frustrating thing. So just stick with the financial examples. So in the financial world, we talk about well, if a foreclosure happens on your house and your credit's damaged, that can take like 7 years to rebuild that
Hmm.
credit history. So you can't just walk into a bank like 6 months later or 3 months later and say, "Hey, I feel bad. I'm not going to make that mistake again." They're going to want proof. They're going to want
Yeah.
time. But in recovery, we expect that our partners are just going to trust us again because we have some type of a relationship with them. But if a bank's going to take 7 years, what makes us think that our partners who've been emotionally devastated, we should move they should move any faster. Now, part of me doesn't even want to say the word 7 years because got many people that are being like, I've been in this longer than 7 years. So, Alana, how does this show up for your partners, or what comes up with this? The time span, time frame.
Well, in your analogy, um, if I were to have a foreclosure or some huge hit on my credit, and I went into the bank and I wanted to make another investment, or I even think of like I'm a business owner. Like if I wanted to make an investment, I have a dream one day of having a property where it can be this whole huge holistic center where people can come and get all of this different type of help. If I wanted to go build that today and I went to the bank, they wouldn't just go, "Yeah, you seem like you're really nice and what you tell me sounds really good." They would actually get in the weeds of my finances. They would be looking through my credit, through all of the history, all of my bank accounts, all of my earning statements. If I was doing it through the company, they want to see the company's statements and business plan. And so I think of like with partners is a lot of times we see that hyper vigilant behavior, and really what I call it is safety seeking. We see the safety seeking behavior that is literally trying to look through anything tangible that you can to have some sort of sense of safety and some sort of sense of what the future holds and what that can look like and whether or not to make that investment. And so I love that you brought that up because I think that for a partner, naturally the brain gets put into that hyper vigilant, super aware state where they are going to look for any sense of safety and danger.
Mhm.
And it's going to be looking for that.
Yeah, I think about if you would, I don't know, part of me feels like this is a little insensitive to do so much comparing to financials, but financials about trust. If you, this is all about investing again, right? After you've been devastated, after there's been a loss. But yeah, if one company acquires another organization, yeah, they're going to pop open the books. They're going to dig through stuff. They're going to take a long period of time. And I could only imagine one person saying financially, I'm going to invest in you, and them saying, can you hurry up in your digging of questions? And maybe you dug too deep. I don't know. I don't like that one. That one makes me uncomfortable. Haven't you already asked enough questions? I don't see the point to your questions. That wouldn't be like somebody that you'd really feel very secure with investing because they're not willing to really open up everything and say, hey, yeah, you can look at everything and before you move forward and decide what you're going to do. And I think it's recognizing that when a partner's digging in and asking questions, that's not punishment. She's doing this because she's wise. Oh, I did it, Alana. I said she. I said I wouldn't do that. Okay. They are asking questions. They're doing it in a really wise way. And I could think about that's what I'd do if I was reinvesting again. Um, Alana, what are some of the ways that you've seen partners using their own version of like due diligence, where maybe it's not seen as, and maybe you've already covered it, but it's not seen as like, um, it's not seen as wise. It's seen more as something different than that.
Yeah, the approach doesn't always look wise. And sometimes there it's not always wise in the way that we go about it. Um, and there is wisdom in trying to get that sense of safety. Like the brain is hardwired to survive, and it is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. We have that innate drive in us to protect. And so the brain, if it is in that hypervigilant state, is doing it because that's what it's hardwired to do. And so I don't want to shame that. Sometimes as partners, we will ask a lot of questions, want a lot of details. And that's where I'll always say to my partners, we can't unknow things. So let's make sure that we're looking for the right type of information that we're looking for, which is one-on-one sessions or group can be really helpful to figure out what is good to know and what isn't good to know. But sometimes the betrayed partner has to ask the same question 5 times, 10 times because they aren't always ready to metabolize the answer, or maybe they're so activated that they can't hear the answer, or maybe they can only hear the answer in layers. And so, for the individual seeking recovery, sometimes they can feel like we already talked about this. Why do we have to keep going through this over and over? And it's because we are working with a traumatized brain. And we do need to slow down to be able to work that process. So it doesn't always like look wise on the surface. When I've run men's groups, some of the things we'll talk about sometimes is um, sometimes it can feel like your partner is asking for crazy things or acting in crazy ways.
Mhm.
But when we truly slow down and learn about what betrayal looks like and look what trauma looks like, and we can understand that lens, then we can start seeing it with a little more clarity and understanding. And the more safety and stabilization we get, the more I see that traumatized brain start to calm down.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Hey, Brandon, I'm thinking about working with individuals seeking recovery. How do you help them like manage the discomfort really associated with their partner that's digging in and I don't know, getting in the weeds for lack of a better word? How do you help them manage that pain associated with that discomfort?
Yeah, I think acknowledging the role that discomfort plays is a paradigm shift in how we think about transparency and honesty. I think discomfort is an indicator that I'm about to have to do something that maybe I've lived the past 6 months, 6 years, whatever it is, sort of protecting. And so from like a needs perspective, we're talking about a need for safety and how do how do partners who have experienced an absence of safety or a trauma due to a betrayal sort of regain that sense of safety. And to Alana's point earlier, there's sort of this quest for that, right? Like, and how, what is it that I need? And it could occur differently with the same question being asked at different points in time. And it has to do with the tone in which the question is responded to. It has to do with the timing of the reaction from the partner. And so I think this is a really good question around how we feel in any given moment as we're on that path to rebuilding that trust or ultimately that sense of safety. And so I think that again, back to this sort of timeline, I think that is a difficult metric. Like once I reach a certain number of times that I've consistently responded to the same question and I'm not getting the result relationally, then I might have to examine what is it that's needed in the immediate moment. And if that means checking in with myself, I notice myself being agitated or frustrated or irritated that I'm being asked this question again, and I've answered it 20 times, and the answer is never satisfying. Well, you think about the tone in which the answer is delivered is a threat to that safety. And so it comes down to presence and immediacy, really acknowledging how you're feeling in the moment and how you're empathic towards your partner's need in that moment. Not historically, not the previous 18 times or the previous 2 times or whatever it is, but in the present moment. What is their need right now? What are they communicating to me? And that oftentimes is consistency around feeling safe with your response and how it's delivered. And that requires you to really think about and experience empathically, what is my partner getting from me right now? Are they getting defensiveness because I'm tired and fatigued from repeatedly delivering the answer, or are they getting security and safety from me in my response?
I love that you just slowed that down in the way that you did because, and I don't remember the percentages. I could Google it really quick, but I'm not going to. But it's like 7% of communication is actually the words that are being used.
Yeah.
The other 93% is body language and tone. And a lot of times, what I see happening in this work that we do as an individual seeking recovery is like, okay, tell me the empathetic statements to say. Like, just tell me what to say. And then they go back and they say the thing, and then it doesn't work. And they're like, well, it didn't work. Like, I said it and they didn't appreciate it. And so I love that slowing it down, the presence, what's happening in your own body, getting aware of it. And what I see a lot of times, and hopefully, Luke, this doesn't take us too off course, but what I see so often is there is dysregulating of the nervous system that's happening with both partners. So a lot of times we focus on the partner in healing, that their nervous system is dysregulated, and it is due to trauma. But I see almost just as much this dysregulation that's happening in the partner who has done the injuring. So then we have two people with these dysregulated nervous systems who are trying to look to each other to feel better. And so there's this being in the presence that really learning and knowing, and I'm speaking to the individual seeking recovery right now, really learning and knowing what does your tone sound like? What are the emotions coming up for you? And are you managing what's happening in your own body? Are you even aware of when you're activated, or are you only aware when somebody else goes, you're off, or why are you so activated? That's a really important part of the work that I see people kind of skip over.
I love that. I think that's brings us to the next piece, which is this one feels so painful to talk about. And I see this all the time. And I've lived it too. And it can feel so legit in the moment. But okay, so a person out there gets caught and they feel a lot of shame and they feel a lot of devastation, a lot of fear. So, and in that moment, they swear, I'm never going to do this again. But we want to recognize that pain isn't the same as like the change. And it feels really like it is. Like if I'm caught and it's painful enough, I'm never going to do this again. But there's nothing that's led to change because the betrayal hasn't been addressed. The brain hasn't been rewired. There's no new structure. There's just a bunch of crisis. There's just a bunch of destruction. And that crisis isn't really sustainable. I mean, man, I wrote that note down to myself. The crisis isn't sustainable. But often that's the part that generates some momentum, but you can't stay there forever. Your body really won't allow you to. So that's why those early promises are made. And Alana, if you could speak to this, but I think about the most uncomfortable things where I was like made the promises that this would never happen again with really nothing ever changing. And that was done out of sincerity. That was done out of place, but really, really unreliable. Alana, can you speak to any of that?
The best apology is change behavior.
Oh,
And a lot of times, betrayed partners are looking for those changes. They're looking to see what is different. It reminds me of that analogy with the house, and you have this couple who lives in a
mm,
house, and there's this earthquake, and the house crumbles to the ground. And so the betrayed partner is like, how, like no one else's houses are falling down. Like what was wrong with our house that the foundation couldn't hold it up? And so the person goes and goes, okay, it's okay, it's okay. We'll rebuild the house. And so they are like, okay, but show me the blueprints. Show me how it's going to look different this time. Show me how the structure and the foundation is different, that if another earthquake hits, it's not going to crumble and almost kill me or almost kill our family. Show me how it's going to look different. And so, again, like similar to the finance analogy, words can only go so far. And for some betrayed partners, the words feel so good. So they want the words, they want to hear that, but it's not enough to sustain without that change behavior. And for others, for other betrayed partners I've worked with, they've heard all the words and they don't want to hear any words anymore. They just want to see and they're looking for that behavior. And I think that's sometimes too why we can get in that behavior task list is because there's this looking for the change and looking for behavior. And so I think that can kind of feed the checking the boxes. And so it's really, yes, we're looking for pattern changes. And going back to what Brandon, you talked about, that consistency over time that when the hard thing comes, instead of getting defensive, the individual seeking recovery is going, hold on, I have some feelings. Let me calm myself down because I want to be present with you. I want to be able to show up. Give me just a sec. I'm going to regulate. That's a very different than instantly jumping into the, why are you on my back? Can't we just move forward? So it's those types of changes that we're looking for.
Can I chime in here real quick?
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I love this. Like the best sort of indicator is a change in behavior, right? And there's a phrase that I think we've all heard, or it's a pretty consistent message is are my words matching my behaviors? I would add to that, are my words, are my emotions, or is my body language matching? So this is about consistency and intentionality, right? Because I think we can also recognize that sometimes we can say all the right things. We can hear all the right things. We know what the right messaging might be to alleviate pain, right? That can be another pattern of saying the right things, but our intention is not consistent or congruent with that messaging. And that further perpetuates the betrayal, right? Is if there's those inconsistencies in our responses, even to the same question. So we can get really like wrapped around the axle around this because we're tied to the outcome of I should be able to quantify the number of times I've done this or said this. And yet my behavior in any given moment doesn't match my emotions and it doesn't match my words. And that we're adding like all these different moving parts into the mix. And I think this is where as couples, we really have to work towards um really examining how to explore accountability in a non-shaming, non-defensive way from both partners too. Because trust can't grow if one partner is defensive at any given time.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's this part, I really like that a lot, Brandon. There's this part of the analogy, Alana, that I wanted to go in further on because men can find it validating and they can not, men can find it validating in my groups because what they'll do is they'll feel like their partner will come to them and they'll be having a critical eye at this. And the house that fell down because of the earthquake, and then it's getting rebuilt. And for the men in my group, it's like, hey, come back and live in my house. And she's like, I don't want to. Your house scares me. The last one fell down and almost killed us. Um, we go, okay, so what is the proper way for her to test that house and make sure that it's not going to fall down again? And we compare it to like okay, what does it feel like when she's testing out the house and making sure that it won't fall down again? It can feel a little bit like she's walking, and I recognize that there can be, I'm worried about a little bit along of coming across as insensitive, so I'm going to be careful as I talk here. Um,
I know it. You're going to go with the analogy, and I love it. As it when I was going through my betrayal and I heard this analogy
uh-huh.
that she comes in or they come in with a sledgehammer and just start knocking down walls.
Mm-hmm.
Like this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful new wall that's been plastered and painted and all of that, and she rips the wall out and is looking underneath to see, was it actually built with 2x4s or are there flimsy little things in there?
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that for the first time, I'll just speak for me, that was like, heck yeah, I'm going to knock down those walls. Heck yeah, I'm going to make sure that we're actually have some kind of foundation here. So I see you tiptoeing around, but
I
I'll
know,
just say
I was glad for you to say it. And that's what's validating is he's like, wait, hold on. And I say he is, and the men in my groups, is it's really nice for him to go, oh, there's a purpose to her grabbing the sledgehammer. There's a purpose to her knocking down the wall because I put all my work and effort into that. And I think that one of the things they're able to acknowledge and realize is like, I'm a little bit nervous that my wall is going to stay standing up, right? Like, yeah, I'm bringing a sledgehammer to it, but is it going to stand up? Do I have confidence in the house that I built? And I don't even say that in like a shaming way. It's just more of like we're learning to trust ourselves again too,
But how
right?
do we show up? Like, how do we show up when the sledgehammer's being used?
Oh, that's a great question. Brandon, I always say, how about you hand the sledgehammer to your partner, right? How about you give it to her rather than making her go search for it and then you're trying to block her from using it?
or are you following your partner around going, what are you doing? Stop it. Why are you doing this?
Mhm.
Can you, that's what I picture in my mind is this following around. And I love what you Brandon, it's such a
Such a
good
good
question
question.
because Luke, you're saying it's okay. Here's the sledgehammer.
Well, I'll tell you what's even more valuable is I'm a little bit nervous about this wall. I'm a little bit nervous about this wall. I think that I'm not quite sure about it. To bring that in actual recovery, what do we do? That's actually what we do is we go, okay, where am I the weakest? And we don't view that as like we failed. We view that as a way to improve. So let your partner into that. And so
Can I
Can I
add a
make
word? Sorry.
this is
can I
good.
make a really fast clarifying
Yeah.
statement though?
Yeah. So we're not talking
Um,
about building a house right now. We're actually talking about recovery.
I think people got that. No, to the betrayed partners, when we're talking about like this knocking down the wall and trying to look and see if the foundation is secure, we're not doing it to hurt the other person. We're not doing it to be mean or to get payback. And we're not talking about character attacks either. Like that's not knocking down walls. I mean, it is knocking down walls, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about looking at like the behaviors. Is this change really a change that's going to stick? Is there a foundation that's being built? in the relationship with safety. Because I don't want somebody to go home and be like, well, Alana said I can knock down walls. So, and then you start tearing apart your partner.
Well,
That's not what I'm saying. So I just want to make sure I clarify
so
that.
so let's actually give some real life examples here. So we don't, there's not a bunch of conclusion drawing of what. Okay, so here's what I think about. Um, think about me building my own a person building their own recovery plan and a partner checking in on that recovery plan, going, you bringing it to them or going, hey, what it is, and them reading a book or learning about recovery and saying, hey, I heard this is useful in recovery. How have you ever considered this? Like, a lot, am I moving too fast?
No, no, I think I hear you. One example that I would give is like if the individual seeking recovery has come up with a list of boundaries for themselves to keep themselves safe. Okay, I'm not going to take the phone in the bathroom. Or if I act out, I am going to let you know within 24 hours. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call my sponsor and I'm going to do some work with that. Let's say the partner realizes that you're in the phone or in the bathroom with your phone, they might then go, oh my gosh, what are you doing? This isn't a safe wall. When are you else are you taking your phone? Now let me look through every inch of the safety plan and let me see if there's other things on here that you said you were going to do that you're no longer doing. And then they start going through phone records, right? And so that's like the knocking down the wall of, uh-oh, I realized that there was I don't know, termites in this part of the wall. And so now I'm going to knock down the whole wall because I got to see what else is going on here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it.
Hey, I'm just going to invite everybody to use the Q&A if you need to, if you'd like to. So just feel free to use it if you'd like, if you want clarifications on anything. Brandon, were you going to say something there?
I was, and I'm trying to focus my thoughts here because there's a million things going on.
Perfect.
Um, I love this example of the sledgehammer on the wall, the termites. I think one of the things that I want to point out here, though, is that I think oftentimes we put a lot of pressure on our relationship to assume that trust is like an established reality. And the fact is that it's not a finish line. Trust is not a finish line. It is a relational practice, meaning it's a language that you speak. It part of that trust involves recognizing the absence of trust and using opportunities or indicators of the absence of trust or a decrease in trust or a betrayal of trust as a moment to practice repair. What do we do with this giant hole in the wall now that this sledgehammer has hit it, or that
Mhm.
there's termites in it? We have to examine what repair is needed, and that we can practice through a softening of our tone, through empathic statements of what the other person's emotional state is, that something right now feels unsafe and we need to pause and try again later. And again, let's not get ahead of ourselves and put that much pressure that trust is a destination. It's a process. It's part of the relational practice.
Hmm.
Thank you for slowing that down because
Yeah,
you're so
thanks.
right with like the house analogy, which we moved off the finance one. I think I like the finance one better, but with the house analogy, it's almost this idea of like, okay, we get the house all good. And then you just move in and we live happily ever after. And so I love that you slowed that down. And just with the reality of if you are a homeowner, you have things constantly breaking down and needing adjusted and needing repaired. And it makes me think of the rupture, repair, restore. And it's a process, rupture, repair, restore that happens over and over and over in all relationships because we're humans trying to navigate this world together and ruptures happen. And so often we want to go from rupture to restore and just have everything good. But the process and the healing is in the repair. It's not in the restore. The restore is the reward from putting in the hard work of the repair process. I love that. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to pull this one in now. This one came into the Q&A, and I'm not going to use it word for word because it came in anonymously. So I'm going to, and if this person, if you feel like I don't get the essence of what you're looking for here, just let us know. Um, so they're referring to words only going so far, and they get that. But what if there are very few words and they don't even know what that their partner's working on, the individual seeking recovery? Because they're currently right now there's an out of house separation. So, and there's no conversing going back and forth. There's no dialogue around recovery. So they're working with professionals. Um, and they don't live together. So there's a sense of like him trying to, or them trying to convince people that they're doing stuff, but they're not even getting anything verbally. Alana, do you have any thoughts to that?
Yeah, I'm just reading the full question.
And while you read it, I've just noticed often that there's a lot of pain associated with coming here because it's like, yeah, I wish the other stuff matters, but I'm not even getting the words. I'm not getting the communication. We're in separation. And there is this period, I'm not going to go all the way down this rabbit hole, but separation's painful. It can feel like the end of the relationship. And the reason separation exists is because there's a type of engagement that is destructive and damaging that we have to create separation so there can be two people that get some healing individually to be able to come back together in a grounded space. And I'll say he is in the individual seeking recovery. Often he will go, okay, because we are separated, I can kind of take all this space and I don't have to communicate too much. And I use the word have to, but that's also really destructive, even with the separation, not be communicating with your partner and being clear with them. There is still a house being built, even in separation. So, and to just let go of communication can be really, really hurtful.
Mhm. Yeah. Brandon, I think I'm gonna let you answer first because I keep going first, but I'm actually really curious where your brain's going with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I want to acknowledge the pain and the disorientation. I think there's the attendee wrote that there's even as they're writing it, there's a sense of no hope, and I think that is a very painful, difficult circumstance to be in, and I think there's a yearning for connection is what I hear, and that yearning for connection can be even more devastating when it's not acknowledged and recognized. And I think there is an element of um, really examining like what the hope, like if you did have hope, what would that look like? What would you need to be seeing? And I can read between the lines. I hesitate to do that. So it's a bit stifling to not have an interactive opportunity here, but I recognize that there's an unmet need for communication. There's an unmet need for knowing that that you're playing a part in your partner's recovery, that there would be an engagement, there would be something verbal, some indication of what's happening. And oftentimes I think this comes down to what we've sort of been talking about in really trusting that there's something going on and not having enough footing to feel like there is, not having a wall to even look at. And how we go about doing that is really uh, almost from a basic lens. What needs do you have on a week over week basis or a month over month basis? And really asking yourself, how what's the state of my needs versus the state of the trust in our relationship? And that's sort of, this, if it's like a state of the union, state of our relationship and where we're at.
Mhm.
I don't know, what would you add to that?
I really like that. And it just makes me think about when I'm working with a couple that's going through separation. I really want to see some kind of therapeutic separation where we're building in therapeutic support. So it's not just this, you go over here to heal and you go over here to heal, and then let's hope maybe at some point our paths cross again. I like having that support where, yes, there's things maybe I need to do to get regulated, and there's maybe things you need to do to heal, but what are the bridges that will be bringing us still together so that as we get more healing, a couple said this so beautifully the other day to me. They said, we're getting healing in our silos and we're both moving forward in our healing, but we're not getting closer together. And so, how are we able to each heal as individuals, but have those bridges that can come together? And that through some kind of therapeutic separation agreement, through some type of communication, and working with a couples therapist who specifically can tend to you wherever you're at. If you're in a place where I'm way over here and you're way over here, but there's still basic things that I need to know, then how do we create that environment and those bridges that, like you said, Brandon, that is being shared and communicated in ways that are appropriate for that relationship. And then ideally, as we keep healing, we can bring that closer and closer and closer together. I will give a resource of Lindsay Stanley and Stevie Hall have a book that came out just a month or two ago called Therapeutic Separations, and it's a workbook that really kind of guides you through what are some of these needs? What am I looking for? What do I want to work on? How are each of us going to be our healthiest self so we can heal and move forward? And it explores when to come back together or when we need to extend the separation. So that can be a really good resource. But um, I think about that having no hope. If the verbal communication is only 7% of the communication and you're not even getting that, that would feel really, it would feel really hopeless to have nothing to build upon or nothing to hold on to. So I do have a lot of empathy for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, just a friendly nudge, I think we've all kind of commented on it. We did a survey a long time ago for people that were coming here. Some of them haven't engaged in recovery yet, so the webinar format brings a lot of comfort to know they got that anonymity. So we recognize that if you put something in the Q&A, we're going to try to do the best to speak to it, to keep you in an anonymous space. So hopefully we can get down to what you're asking, but feel free to put in anything you want clarified as you hear us speak about it.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see. I just noticed. Okay, so well, let's go through this next part and then Alana, if you want to take a look at the next piece that came in here.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's go back to our financial analogy here. And we'll speak to the person, the partner, individual seeking recovery. And I'll ask this question. Would you invest in you if you, um, in the betrayal? So if you were going to do it, uh, and what would make you determine like, yeah, I'd invest in me if I was the partner of me? Sounds kind of funny, but I would go, yeah, with what I have going on and what I'm doing in my recovery, I would feel comfortable investing, or no, I wouldn't feel comfortable investing in me yet. I think I need more time. So we want to just highlight for a second that recovery isn't just about not acting out. It's about the things that I think we've referenced already before, showing consistency, providing emotional safety, and what you do every day is going to show your partner, like, I am safe, I am accountable, I am steady. So that consistency is going to be really, really important in the process of somebody else being to, in the process of somebody evaluating you to reinvest in the relationship. Um, so there is, Alana, do you want to touch on that one? I got a follow-up question for you, what I just talked about. Sorry, not trying to make you do done to different things at one time.
Okay, well, here's my confession. The last, whatever you said, the last little bit, I haven't listened to a word because I
Okay,
haven't even thought
that's
about this
okay.
question.
I wouldn't expect you to.
So if I take us, this is to everybody, if I take us down like a totally different path, That's what you get for asking me to do this. But it's such a good question that came in that I want to talk about. And then whatever you just said, maybe Brandon can help us out and combine the two. But
Well, let me speak to it real quick, Alana, and then you can go into what came in the chat. Is that
yeah,
okay? Okay, so Brandon, we can tag team this one together since Alana was taking care of the question in the chat. So the question I was going to ask is what type of changes actually help a partner feel safe in reinvesting? So if we're evaluating the investments, should I reinvest? What type of changes should I look for before I reinvest? You want to go first, Brandon?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this. I think the types of changes I spoke a little bit to this. I think the types of changes, I'd be careful about this because we're sort of prescribing something in a
Hmm.
general sense. I think this goes back to what I was getting at earlier around relational repair strategies. Like wh- what needs are not being met when there's a rupture, right? When there's a hole in the wall, or a wall's been taken down. And we can go back to what those connection points, if we've established a pattern for communicating connection points. I feel like I really want to attend to rebuilding a wall is going to require a blueprint. It's going to require materials. It's going to require time, labor. It's going to require mistakes. And I think what I talk with most about, particularly men, in the context of being a an individual seeking recovery, is not skipping the planning part, not skipping the material collection, not skipping, instead of just assuming like just because I want there to be this wall built, it's going to be built. There's a lot of pressure that couples put on themselves, on each other, to not communicate what the plan needs to be and what needs each individual member has. And again, it comes down to I need to feel consistency. I need to feel safety. I need to feel, and I hesitate to even use the word trust because couples don't oftentimes jump to that. They say trust, but that's a pretty like generic, ambiguous term when trust has been essentially eliminated.
Yeah.
What they need to feel is safe. They need to feel their body is regulated. They need to feel like they can be accepted and seen. And there is a slowing down that has to happen. There's a softening that I think has to occur. And when that doesn't easily happen, we can go down this rabbit hole of catastrophizing and being activated or sort of blaming, and we start all over again. But I'm not answering your question.
No, it's good.
that's
I love
good.
the thing you let off with, which is I think it's a little bit scary to write a prescription here, right? To create that checklist. And I think about the question of what changes actually help a partner feel safe in investing. And I think it really depends, but that consistency piece and that attunement piece is going to be really important. And that can be maddening for somebody that just lives up here and doesn't live here, right? Somebody that is not in tune with their emotions and is more analytical through a process. But yeah, attuned and consistent. Um,
I love that you slowed that down, Luke, and asked that question because this builds really good into the question that just came in. Um, and and I know we only have 4 minutes left, so I'll do this fast, but um, years ago, I kind of like mapped out like this road to recovery and what it looks like. And I talked about how a lot of times individuals will get to this place of like, there's no acting out behavior and there's no like bad behavior happening. And so they're like, why isn't the other person just fixed? And I talk about 4 pillars of recovery that really create a foundation that we can build on, which is transparency, humility, vulnerability, and empathy. And I've had so many guys in groups be like, well, sure, you give us all the hard ones. I'm like, yeah. And it's like those aren't check marks. It's something that you have to learn how to live and breathe. And I love, Brandon, you use the words a softening and a slowing down. I think that's really important. And so the question that came in, it said, what would you suggest a betrayed partner look for in their partner's recovery if finances are a major issue? Like if we don't have the money to go pay for the intensive and we don't have the money to go pay for therapy and groups, like what do we do? And they said that they worry that they won't do the things timely enough to be enough for the betrayed partner. And the betrayed partner agrees, like, I don't know if they can do it timely enough. And what I want to say to that is that effort that you put in can be seen. And that effort, I'll say to people, it's a lot less finding like the perfect therapist or the perfect recovery program or the perfect group. It's really about that individual and the effort that they're willing to put in on a consistent basis. Are they willing to be listening to podcasts regularly or reading books? Are they willing to do like the daily habits of sitting down and meditating? Are they willing to go work out and take care of their body on a regular basis? Are they willing to practice emotional regulation? There's tons of free groups out there. They're not all created equally, but there's good groups out there that are free. Are they going and finding those resources? Are they investing that time? And when they discover of, you know what I'm doing, maybe it isn't enough. I've had guys literally go deliver pizzas to pay for their group because that's how committed they are to being free from this. And so that effort that you put in, those efforts is what does create that movement. And partners can see and feel when there is actual change happening, and they can also see and feel when there isn't.
I always
What
have
our
a hard
nervous system can pick up on that even our brain can't never ceases to amaze me, the human body.
I always have a hard time with this one, Alana. This one's a struggle for me. I always try to make sure I stay emotionally grounded, and I think a lot of it's tied to my own journey. But I have weaponized against you so many times finances and had that be the what was kept me from recovery. And I recognize in those moments I really believed and could get you to believe that it was a financial piece. And that's the power of the human brain not wanting to change. So, like you said, free groups, free podcasts, free things. And this person's commenting on some of the things that have been done, but we're looking for consistency. And the human spirit is so tenacious. You'll notice that if we want something, we'll go get it. We'll figure out how to make it happen. So, I think there's a part of me that's sensitive to feeling a little bit insensitive to maybe I don't know, the struggle, but also recognizing that we're fighting for relationships, we're fighting for recovery, and it's a big journey. And for the people, Brandon, I can see that you're like here, right? For the people that are that's hard to hear. I would love to have a conversation around it because I'm going to validate you in how heavy that journey is, and also recognizing I don't get to negotiate with what change takes. Anyway, Brandon, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say like the example about what we want, we go after. And I think if I could frame it as a recognition, and I fully acknowledge this is easier said than done, but if we're sort of in a dreamer state, if I dream about or think about what peace feels like, what does a peaceful relationship feel like in my body? Can I think about that? Can I recognize that? Can I work toward that? And I fully recognize the stress associated with the comments have been made so far about what I
Mhm.
need to see in my partner. Um, And my invitation is, what do you need to see in yourself to feel peace?
Mhm. Mhm. I feel
Yeah.
like that's such a beautiful way to wrap it up. And I know we're at the end of the hour. We're past it. So um I want to just reiterate that this healing work is it's hard work, and some of the hardest things we do can be the most rewarding and bring us the most joy. And so it doesn't have to always be doom and gloom. And I remember way back in the beginning feeling like there is zero hope of ever being happy again. And if I could fast forward time and see all the things I would have experienced, I'm glad I didn't, because I would have tried to skip things. But healing is absolutely possible. And so it is just that one foot in front of the other and putting in the work. And so I send you love and encouragement as you do that. And I will put a plug for with our intensives. We do intensives, I don't know, every month or two. Um, we started a scholarship program because I didn't want the intensives to only be for people who had money at their fingertips. And so, if that's something where you do want to put in the work and you really want to invest, now I know you still have to travel out here, but just know we do have a scholarship program for people who financially may not be able to make ends meet in those ways.
Mm.
So just know that's out there. And I will also give a plug for our women's somatic intensive in August, um, somewhere in the 20s. It will be in the show notes, or whatever they call our note, the email that goes out after. We'll put the dates of it. But our women's somatic intensive is all about, it's for women to heal some of the trauma that's been trapped in their body. And it's one of my very favorite intensives. So if anyone feels like that could be beneficial to them, it's not for people who have just discovered. It's usually for people who have more of a foundation and they're not in that constant fight, flight, or freeze. They're ready to dive in a little bit deeper and move forward.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Brandon, thanks for connecting with us here today. It was good to have
Absolutely.
a fill of your energy. And if you want to learn more about Brandon or work with him, he's on our site. And it was good to spend time with you all. Please enjoy your evening, and we will talk to you next month. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.